Thing.
All right.
So you were looking up about space debris.
Yeah, I was sitting in like a doctor's office or something when I was I was like 18 or whatever,
Yeah.
like around that age, you know what I mean, when I kind of came up with the concept or whatever. And I was flipping through a magazine, and it was just like a little article about like space junk. It was like talking about how it was going to be difficult for, us to launch anything into space because there's so much debris building up that it's like you can't even calculate it. And it may even like ended the article with a little blurb about, like NASA may have to start sending garbage men or something into space, and that like set the seed. And
You were 18 at the time?
I was probably about 18. I was
Okay.
I was in the transition of I was like finishing high school. So I was like probably my senior year, and I was going into the college. And at that point, for years, I was like, I hadn't even considered going to college necessarily, but like my senior year, I was like, oh man, maybe I'll do like film or animation or something, like, you know what I mean? And so I was coming up with stories and things, and my senior year of high school, I made like a short animated film, like for like a class or whatever. It was like a really ambitious
Nice.
project and like way overstepped my bounds, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
kind of like one of those things, but afterwards, like I got to screen it in front of a huge number of kids in our auditorium for like this event. And at the end of it, it was like dead silence. And I was like sitting in the back, and I was like, oh shit. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of erupted in like cheers and shit.
Yeah.
And like clapping and stuff. And I was like nobody knew who the fuck I was in high school. You know what I mean? Like I was the kid who was like, I was sitting in graduation next to two people who were like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I was just like wallflower, dude. I was like, nobody knew who the fuck I was.
Yeah. Yeah, well, keep going with you.
And it was just, so that was like a wild experience. Like everybody's like cheering, like, holy cow and stuff.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, people are coming up to me and like, well, how did you do that? Like, how did you, like, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, that was like it. Kind of, it was like, oh yeah, no, this is what I got to do.
That was the
movies.
moment?
Yeah.
Oh,
you know
my
what I mean?
God.
I got to, like, I got to ride this high, longer. And that was like, oh, it was the catalyst. I'm like, I'm going to go to film school, Columbia College in Chicago. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
Wow. So you grew up in Illinois.
I grew up in Illinois.
Okay, and I'm
Yeah.
guessing you were a film buff the whole time?
I was, I grew up, like always watching movies and stuff like that. Like that was kind of, I think the way my father and I bonded and stuff like that. Like I wasn't into sports or guy stuff. You know what I mean? Like
It's so
not cars.
It's so frustrating when like you want to have a regular conversation and like, so the game, right? It's like, man, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
No, absolutely. I feel, I mean, you're that guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it is. It's frustrating, especially when you're meeting like new people. It feels like when you're in a group with mostly guys or whatever, there's always that fallback. Well, it's like, well, I don't know who you are, but we could probably talk sports. And they'll start talking sports, college basketball or something, or baseball. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Man.
Please talk to me about Looney Tunes.
I was like, I'm a nerd. I grew up reading comic books and watching movies, So, I think that was like growing up. Yeah, that was just easy for.
I get you.
Yeah.
So you had this moment where you made an animated short film, which, by the way, kudos that it was animated.
Yeah.
My God, I'm learning how to draw now, and I can't even. It's crazy. And that was the spark to get into film in general. Like you really thought like this could happen.
That was like when I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe I could do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like maybe I could. I didn't have I was starting to build my confidence towards the end of high school, but like early high school, especially junior high, I had like zero confidence. I was like, very introverted and really didn't start to come out of my shell until like my senior year of high school.
Okay. So then you decided you went to
Columbia College.
Columbia College in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so you studied film there. What was that experience like for you?
Frustrating.
Please regale me.
You know what it was? It was, I was young and like excited about it. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna like sign up for these classes. I'm gonna start doing shit, man. Like right off the bat. Like that summer, I was in my head already, like creating all these ideas and stuff. And it was. You get there and it was hard to even to get the classes you wanted. you know, you had to, you know, it was like the other students, of course, had seniority. I was just a freshman. I had to like, you know, kind of wait. And
Was
stuff.
the gen ed as well? You had to take math and
Yeah, but to be fair, it was like pretty light. You know what I mean? Like one of the math courses I took was like math and art and nature.
Okay.
You know, it was like
taking the bullshit.
Yeah, it was bullshit
Yeah.
for sure. And I was kind of like, okay, yeah, I can handle that.
Sure.
You know, but you know, but I took like a couple of classes and stuff like that. But I took like a few animation courses and like a film history course and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like, I quickly got discouraged. I saw like all these other like super talented people. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, you deserve to make it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you deserve to make it. You know what I mean? You don't, not so much, but you do. You know, it was just kind of like there was a whole group of people. I was like, oh yeah, I don't know if I quite got what it takes. I got all these ideas, but I don't know if I have the talent to kind of to do it.
And what pushed you further? What was the thing that was driving you to be like, I don't, even though I feel this insecurity, why how did you keep pushing through?
I mean, I didn't actually. I got to a point where I was like, I just dropped out.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I went for about a year and a half. You know, the first year was just kind of getting into the feel of everything, and I had a few courses that I wanted, and then yeah, I don't know. It's at one point, like in the kind of the early part of my second year, I'm not sure what it was exactly, but I was getting frustrated, and just lacking confidence, I think. And I was like, I don't want to waste money sitting here being like, maybe this isn't what I'm gonna do.
Was your family supportive of all of this?
No. I mean, they were supportive of me, like doing something, like like if you want to be a filmmaker, hell yeah, go out and be a filmmaker, but like do the work. You know what I mean?
You better actually follow.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely. And so it was like, you know, and I was like, I'm just gonna drop out. You know, they were like, no. You know, like you know, like don't like. But I was also an adult at that point. You know, they're like, we can't force you, but what are you gonna do then? You're gonna just wander aimlessly. You need some direction. You know. And I'll never forget too, like, because the day I walked out of one of my classes, I was just thinking about it. In my head, I was like, I'd made the decision. I was like, I'm gonna drop out. Man, fuck it, I'm not coming back. And this homeless dude comes up to me and he asked me for some money, and I was like, I'm reaching in. I'm like, shit, I only had like a few dimes or something. You know what I mean? I'm like, here, man, sorry. And he's like, sorry. Why apologize? And I was like, I don't know. I was like in a daze anyway, you know? And he's like, hey, man. He's like, whatever you think is going on right now, you may be struggling. He's like, don't drop out of school. You better stay in. Just muscle through. It was like it was like out of a fucking movie itself. You know what I mean? Because it was like, it took me out of almost like, I was in a daze. You know what I mean? Because I was like, it was just a thought that came into my head. And then this stranger comes up to me and is like, don't do it. You know what I mean? Like kind of a thing.
Sometimes it feels, I mean, you see my little yin yang. Sometimes it feels like the universe is like, you need to.
Steps in, man, you know?
So, but you did ultimately?
I did ultimately, which is not right. Doesn't play along with the story.
I know.
You know? But it is still one of those things, one of those coincidences that haunts me to this day where I was like, I mean, like he was right. Like I shouldn't have. I should have stuck with it because I was off track for years, like many years.
Well, that was about sophomore year that happened?
Yeah.
So around sophomore year, you're like, I'm done. So then what happened from there? You just started working or?
Yeah, I started working just kind of odd jobs and stuff. And then about that time, my father, who had been in banking for years, was and hated it. You know, it was a job he never wanted to do, had to do it, support his family and stuff. My siblings were all grown up, moved out. They had their own. You didn't have to take care of them.
You the youngest or the oldest?
I'm the youngest of four.
Oh, okay.
And quite a bit. You know what I mean? There's like a 7-year gap between me and my sister. So she's the next youngest, and so he got to the point where he's like, he just quit banking. He's like, I'm just going to quit, and he didn't have much of a plan either. And he was like, for some reason or another, despite the fact that he has like no creative bone in his body, he was like, I think I'm gonna go into sign making. He saw some seminar or some shit, you know what I mean? And they sold him on it. And he's like, I'm gonna open a sign shop and make signs, and I could use your help. And I was like, okay, sure, let's make signs. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, I'll design them and whatever. Okay. And yeah, we struggled for like 2 years. Didn't happen. You know what I mean? And I think mostly like my dad just thought it would be easier being his own boss, but it's not, right? You know what I mean? And so it was an awesome education for me to see like, oh yeah, in order to be your own boss, which has its advantages, like, no, you gotta, that's your full time, that's your life. That's what you have to make it, you know?
It feels like most people don't grasp, well, first off, like being your own boss, far more work, but far more fulfilling.
Yeah.
I think. And it feels like people don't understand just how cutthroat entertainment industry is in general. Like, I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a stand-up comic, but I know that feeling of looking around and seeing people who are like, wow, I can't even imagine how to do what you're doing. It's so hard to put into words. So I get you there, and I'm okay. Well, I'm excited.
Go for it.
I was actually okay. So a little bit about me and my perspective. When I saw you guys at C2E2, that was my second time at C2E2. The first time, I made an absolute ass of myself in front of you guys. From what I remember, I had a mask on. I don't know if any of you guys were I don't know if you were you there at last C2E2?
I was, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I made an ass of myself.
Okay, it could have been that I was walking around. Maybe I was like,
I just remember I was excited. I've seen your guys' videos and I've seen what you've been a part of. And anytime I see people making art and working together, there's this energy that it's so hard to describe. It's like, how are you guys doing this?
Yeah.
And I had just moved to Chicago. I'm from California. I don't know if you knew that.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm from California. I had just moved here. It had been a few months.
Okay, I was curious because I knew you. Yeah, I knew you were from like close to LA or
yeah, Riverside, the desert.
Yeah. But I was curious. I'm like, oh, how long have you been in Chicago?
It's been about 2 years now, going on 3.
Okay,
and
so like right in like the pandemic, like
as it was
sort of. Dang.
I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know.
I don't know, dude.
Like, time has gotten very warped for me.
Absolutely.
But I was out here, and a big part of why I moved out here was to not only for my career in stand up, but was to kind of find myself. And I was still in that space, and you guys, what you guys do and what you do in particular is inspiring to me. So when I hear when I hear you say, I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I just went for it, especially at such a young age, that's scarier than I think people realize, you know? And like, it sounds like your dad took the safe route initially. I don't know if banking's safe.
Right, yeah. But but for sure.
Doing something that you don't necessarily like to do just to pay the bills. And I did that for the longest time, and I hated myself. And it wasn't until I think I was about 25, 26 where I was like, fuck this, let's do this comedy thing. So I get excited when I hear you guys' stories.
Yeah.
So okay, so you guys are making signs,
but not making money.
Okay. And
eventually had to just close up shop. We couldn't afford to keep it up. He eventually had to go back into banking. He was like, and I was away from it enough to where I thought, I'm like, maybe I'll make take another shot at it. I turned 21, and my friends all pitched in. And
so you were making signs at around 20?
Yeah, I was 19 or 20 when we opened.
Okay.
And
still spry.
Still pretty spry for sure. But it was it was an education. It was like having to be like a salesman and a production guy, and and like the whole dynamic of my father and I and our relationship shifted to a different kind of dynamic than I would have expected. And I think I had a completely then different relationship with my father than my siblings.
What was it pre-job and then post-job?
Pre-job, my
Actually,
dad.
Before you say, let me just.
Sure. So pre-job, my dad, he was kind of he was a good guy, but he was stern, kind of. He just seemed like a frustrated. I think he was just stuck in a job he didn't want to do. And, you know, it was just kind of like just the disciplinarian, you know what I mean? And it was like, I didn't have like we didn't have like a super, super close connection. And he wasn't like the type of dad who opened up and like, well, now, son, I'm going to tell you about life kind of a thing. You know, it was just kind of like, yeah, I'm here to provide and, you know.
Old school.
Yeah. And so it was like clear that like he felt like, oh, in order to do this business, I need help. And I was like, yeah, no, sure, let's do this. I'm willing to help you. So I think shifted his mentality to be like, now we're kind of like, we're work partners. And in an odd way, I think it was easier for him to open up to me being like, oh, we're on the same, we're the same kind of like, we're even.
Yeah. It equalized your playing field.
Yeah.
Right.
And because like for the first time, I think like he depended on me. He's like, I need you to be the creative guy and to be, you know, and also to help with sales and, you know, like to help me run this business basically. And so it was interesting. We would have lunch together. We would, you know, go to work and come home every day kind of together. And I saw he like started to open up to me and stuff in ways that I knew, like, I'm like, I don't think he's ever told my siblings these stories or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like getting a little window into his life.
How did that make you feel that he was doing that?
I felt, I almost didn't even want to call it like bring attention to it, you know, because I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm just kind of like taking it, I'm like,
you don't want to scare the deer.
Yeah, right. And it was even funny was like, because we had like one other guy who worked with us, and it was just like for a while I just started calling his name is Dan. I started calling him Dan instead of Dad. You know what I mean? Because it was like that's like what we're doing. We're work partners. You know what I mean? He's calling me Jim, and I'm calling him Dan, and you know whatever. But we're having lunch together and stuff, and he's kind of telling me a little bit more about his life, and so I felt kind of honored to have that relationship with him because I don't think that my siblings really had that. And it's funny though because it was like it didn't take long before like when we had to close the business to where things shifted back, and it was kind of like I was just a dumbass kid who, you know, doesn't know anything about life, and you know, I'm not gonna, you know, it was just a weird like he needed that. Yeah. He needed to have that relationship with me in order for him to function, I think. You know, and I just accepted it because it was like, oh, this is cool. I'm getting to know him in a way that I don't think.
That must have been a nice moment. You know, sometimes you get those moments of like, it's so funny. I don't know if you felt this way growing up, but I was also a movie guy and sitcom guy, specifically like sitcoms and cartoons. And at the end of the 30 minutes, it always wrapped up perfectly. And in my head, I was like, the day's over. Why haven't I learned my lesson? And why isn't it all fixed? So I don't know if you had that, but I've come to a place as I've gotten older of like, oh no, it's not done. You know, it keeps going. It keeps growing and changing. But that's awesome. So, okay, so it falls apart and your dad goes back to work. Yeah. And then you get some friends to do what exactly?
So like, when I turned 21, my friends had all gotten together and pitched in and bought me like a 16 millimeter Bolex camera. Okay. Which is like a film camera they were using at Columbia and stuff. And, because this is back in the mid-90s, you know, I'm an old dude.
The 1900s? Yeah. Damn. Okay. No, I want to speak on that real quick. Sure. Let me say that is something else. God damn it, do I have respect for that? Because it's not like, I'm gonna sound old too. The kids these days, they can take out their fucking phone and make shit. If you wanted to make something, you had to decide, like, I'm gonna do this. And you had to figure out old technology with cranks and levers and shit. So so this the mid 90s. We need to make a film about your life. Yeah. So is the mid 90s? The sign business doesn't work. Your friends are like, fuck it, let's do this, and y'all pitched in and got this camera.
Yeah, they got me this camera, and they're like, go make movies. Like, go back to school, do it. You know what I mean? Kind of, and I was like, and it really fucking energized me. You know what I mean? It was like, and touched me on a way that like. Because they were like, they could see how frustrated I was, but I wasn't necessarily talking about it. And for them to kind of pull together and be like, hey, now you don't have any excuses. Here's a camera. Go out and make something, you know. And so I was like, yeah, all right, I'm going to go back to school. And I went back to Columbia. And unfortunately, it was just the same frustrations were there. But like my mentality was like, no, I want to make movies. Like I want to do this. And I don't care if anybody is better than me. I'm going to put the work in kind of, I'm like at that mindset. But just the way it was, and maybe it's different now, but it was run by a bunch of artists. And the administration was kind of garbage. You know what I mean? It was my film teacher at the time was moving to New York, so he didn't give a shit. He only showed up half the time. Really didn't teach the class. I got into a screenwriting class that I didn't realize had a prerequisite, and I wasn't prepared for, so I had to drop out. I had to drop that, and it was just I'm like, no, this is way too frustrating. This is too hard. I'm just gonna try and do it on my own. And the technology was starting to change then. So I started investing in some cameras and some nicer end they're still tapes, but they were like high end like video cameras. You know what I mean? They
high
were like
VHS.
Exactly.
Right.
And
this is, and to preface for all the youngsters, this is pre-YouTube.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to make a movie, you had to go out and sell it then too, and like film festivals, all that shit. It's a huge investment, right? And at that point, it was like, I had invested in some cameras and stuff like that, but I'm like, I do need to work. So I was just working odd jobs, construction, anything I could that was going to pay some money.
That's really badass, by the way. Construction in particular?
Yeah. I was young. I was fit. I was like, yeah, no, it's okay. It's like I want to, earn my keep. And also, too, I didn't have the confidence to be like, oh, I'm going to be a clerk, or I can, you know what I mean, like work with people. I'm still very introverted in that way. And you too?
People get surprised by it as a comic.
Sure.
But like I found out I was an introvert during quarantine. I tricked myself into thinking like I love being alive for the party, and as soon as quarantine happened, and I was like, oh, I don't have to talk to anybody.
I love
this is great. There's something about people that I love and I'm fascinated by, but I'm exhausted by, which is where this podcast started. When I first moved out here, I didn't know anyone, and I'm still pretty socially awkward, but I was socially awkward, and I was like, I knew I can engage in this way. It's easy to find a flow with one person in a space, whereas when there's a bunch of people, it feels like there's so much different energy going on. I can't, like my brain almost feels hazy.
Can't tune into what.
Yeah, I can't lock in. And so it's just easier this way. But so you're an introvert, you're working, you're like, I'm gonna make my money, I'm gonna make my thing on my own.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that things were slow, obviously. It was like super slow going. I teamed up with this other buddy of mine, or this other guy I met through a friend who was like trying to make movies. And, we were like, he wanted to shoot on film, so we were like doing test footage with the film and like then send it away for processing and then get it back and be like, oh shit, it's all out of focus. And then, this like weeks go by and shit, and it's like, I'm like, fuck it. You know what? I've got these high-end cameras. Let's shoot something with this, like these video cameras. And we made a little short film that he wrote and I helped him produce and I acted in. And at that same time, though, I was like, I need to make some cash, and I got a job working at this health club, and just to make a few extra bucks, and I thought like that'll help me get into shape and stuff like that too. And my buddy was a manager there, and he was like, he's like, yeah, we got an opening in the housekeeping. You can fold towels, and it'll be it's an easy job, and And I'm like, yeah, no, that's cool. So I did that, working nights, and still was doing like some construction on the side and stuff like that, and more and more, it was hard to focus on that aspect of making movies. It was like, now I got to make money and I have to, provide for myself and whatever, But, it was kind of, there was like somewhere within that period of time, I had like my thumb on it because me and this guy had made this little short, and we were like, worked well together, and was like, yeah, maybe we could do something. We could start, sending to film festivals and maybe start our own little production company and stuff.
Is this footage anywhere that can be found?
he has a copy. Like,
Okay.
I had a DVD for a while that had the movie on it.
Okay.
And, yeah, I left it with a buddy. You know, I had one copy, and I left it with a buddy's house like a couple decades ago.
We'll go through a basement somewhere.
Yeah, it'll turn up. I have reached out to him and be like, dude, you still have a copy of that? We got to put it up, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because again, this is pre-YouTube.
Yeah. That's so crazy. I would love to see that, by the way. Just fresh face.
Honestly, I would too. Like,
Yeah.
man, like, I was in my mid-20s, you know, it was, yeah.
So you guys make a thing. You make a short film?
Yeah, it was a short film.
Okay. You guys make a short film and you put it together. You're learning what to do, what not to do. Also, before we even get further, are you still friends with those people that got you that camera?
Most of I'm still in contact with. I'm not as close
Okay.
with some of them as, you know,
Life.
Yeah.
If they ever listen to this and you guys listen, you are fantastic friends.
Oh, yeah.
To see you struggling and to go out of their way to say, hey, come on. Sometimes you need
That
just a little push.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, and I don't know if I ever told them this, but like that night afterwards, I went home and they had, you know, like a big card and they all wrote little messages and shit. And I broke down and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a child. You know what I mean? It was like this deep, long, cleansing cry of humble. I was just humbled and full of gratitude. And, you know, I was so overwhelmed by the gesture, you know.
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah.
So you guys make this stuff, start putting stuff out, or you sent out your short film. Did you send it out?
We never really sent it out. We went to like a few little film festivals and got like a booth and like we're gonna, you know, talk about it and whatever. At that same time, I don't know. For some reason, I got it in my head that I don't know. I was like the girl I was seeing, there was like. I thought I was in love with, you know, like broke up with me and I was like, oh, you know, depressed and shit. And then at the same time, like my friends were getting married and having kids or having life-changing things happen or moving away. And I kind of was feeling like aimless, you know, I was kind of feeling like, I don't know, man.
Were you about 22, 23?
At that point, actually, I was already like, I was probably like 25.
Okay.
I was, and
That's a scary.
and I was working at that health club, and I didn't have a ton of money because I was spending it all on trying to make my movie and shit, and had like $360, and I spent it to go visit some friends who had just moved back to Spokane, Washington.
Are you from Washington?
No, but they were out here when we met and stuff, and then they were like, yeah, we're moved. They got married and moved back, and another buddy of mine and I were like, yeah, let's go visit them, you know, like. And, you know, when you're 25, you can be like, yeah, no, fine. I can spend my last, you know, I just got a job working in a health club. I'll be fine.
There's something especially wild about your 20s.
Yeah.
Just no thought.
Yep.
So you spend your last bit of money to go visit your friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, just give them like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And like something happened to me on the flight where I was like, I could let all that other shit go. Like I was like, I got past the sadness. And I was just like, yeah, I'm ready for a change, something else, something new, a whole just a change of scenery or whatever. And by the time I got off the plane and we were walking around Spokane, I was like I was there like 45 minutes, and I was like, I think I'm gonna move here. And I tell my friends at the end of the weekend, I tell my friends, I'm like, I think I'm gonna move here, and they're like, fuck you, you know, they're like, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, it's like it's got mountains, it's got like open like nature and shit, like at that time in my early 20s, like I'd love to go take trips out to Montana and Colorado and go camping and stuff, and at like they had thrown a party for my buddy and I before we went back to Chicago. And one of their friends was this woman who she was a smoke jumper, and she had just retired basically. She was young, but she was just like, she did it for like 10 or 11 years, and she was like, yeah, that's enough. You know what I mean? Yeah. But she was talking about it, and she was like, what an amazing experience that was. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a fucking smoke jumper. I'm going to jump out of airplanes into fires and what an adventure, know?
Yeah.
Which, and again, the mentality of like a 25-year-old, dude being like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. So, and I'm like, I just got a job at a health club. I'm going to get in the best fucking shape of my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to work for the next year. I'm just going to work my ass off, get into shape, save money, and then I'm going to fly back to Spokane and live in Spokane. So that was my focus, like that year.
This is, by the way, like a Scorsese film where I'm like, why is the character going?
Yeah, why did he decide that?
I can't wait I'm looking forward to seeing how we get to you making space trash, man.
I know, dude. It's a long, convoluted story. Sorry.
Okay. No, I'm excited. Hold on. Let me just do the... Okay, so then you're like, fuck film again.
Yeah. But like my buddy is still like we made this short and he's like still kind of trying to do stuff with it, and he's got like, well, what are you leaving? You know what I mean? And we were like, we had finished it, but we were still finishing up. There was still like all that little bit of post production stuff you have to do, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like maybe we'll keep in touch. We'll still do stuff. I don't know, but he's like, but yeah, you're moving like the other side of the country for like, all right, and. But having like that focus and like, I don't know, it was like one of the most like peaceful times in my life in the sense of like, yeah, I just let everything else go. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I have some focus and direction because I just felt this aimless for a while, know? And, my buddy who worked at the health club, we were really close friends, and he got me the job there. Weeks before I was supposed to go out to Washington, got sick and developed a brain tumor.
Okay.
And that was another, like, I walked into work one day and I saw there was like this dude working at the front desk, and he's like, you got to call. Paul's his name. He's got to call his wife.
25, 26?
Yeah, I was about 26, 27 maybe at this time. It was like about a year. I worked that year, and he was. He was
sick,
and like, and up to that point was a super fit guy, always took care of himself. You know what I mean? Didn't smoke, didn't do drugs, didn't drink. You know what I mean? It was like,
of all the people,
right. It was just like, and he just got married, and I was like, man, shit, like I can't go. You know what I mean? Like it was still in the back of my head. I'm like, I'm gonna go eventually, but like, nah, I gotta stick around. You know what I mean? And like,
how long have you known? It was Paul. Was his name?
Paul was his name. We had known each other for about 7 years, probably at that point.
That's significant.
Yeah, it was like we met when I was like 17, and we were in a band together.
Classic.
Of
course.
I
picture him as the drummer for some reason.
He was the drummer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes. He was the drummer.
So Paul, out of nowhere, we got okay.
And so it was just like, man, yeah, everything kind of just refocused again, and it was just like, I just got to stay and see what I can do. Sure. Helped organize some benefits to help him raise some money. The place where we worked offered him a higher position so that he could have better insurance, which was actually
very nice
of them. And but they kind of wanted me to work alongside him, kind of like we would take the position together, just because they foresaw whatever issues coming down the road. And so I was like, yeah, okay. So basically we were like the engineers of the building, like, and I didn't know anything. I was like, I'm a handy enough guy, and I'm willing to do whatever needs to get done. But like, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. We'll be the engineers of this building, and we're in charge of all the maintenance now and stuff. And I went from folding towels to being in charge of that whole department.
Yeah.
And like all the maintenance and stuff.
It's very Forrest Gump-esque.
Yeah.
It's just things are just fascinating.
Life is right. Yeah, I'm just falling into these situations.
Okay, so you're about 27 now.
Yeah.
Your buddy Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Paul gets sick. You guys start working together in a job that you're not necessarily qualified for.
Yeah.
But you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
Okay, and film is where in your mind?
It's still kind of there, but it was like it got pushed back.
Okay.
You know, it was just kind of like, now this is, I have to focus on this, and this has to be my focus. And the job was demanding. You know what I mean? Because it was like a 170,000 square foot building with 4 pools and hot tubs and all that shit, and I had to like get my license to be a CPO, a certified pool and spa operator, and I had to get my HVAC. Like I had to like go and like get all these certifications in order to do the job, and it was every day was just that learning experience of like, putting out a new fire. Like, this thing broke down. Now I got to figure out how to fix it. You know what I mean, kind of a thing. And then simultaneously, you know, watching him and seeing him struggle and stuff. You know, man, it was a really hard couple of years.
I'd imagine so. I think, to speak a little more here, I think the older you get, the more you realize that life just, it's so splattershot. And sometimes sometimes life really just isn't fair. I don't know what happens to Paul. Getting the vibe, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's sad. And I think, I don't know, I'm going to speculate, and you please correct me, you know, or tell me how you were feeling at the time, but death, in my experience, amplifies the way you look at life. I've had important people die in my life throughout points in my life, and it's all of it's affected me in big ways. And I'd imagine Paul's situation. Can you, if you don't mind, can you describe where your head was at that point? What was going on? Like, how'd you feel?
Man, it's hard. You know, like I had to have the focus of like taking care of things at work. You know what I mean? It became more and more apparent that he was doing, like, he couldn't do as much, you know. So, you know, I felt this obligation, like, I got to hold down the fort, and I got to do, you know, step in. At the same time, you know, I was sort of the person, you know, like myself and another friend of ours was like, that he could talk to realistically about things, about his fears, about what he's going through, and the challenge of having to hear that and go through that, and then have to deal with the odds and ends of maintaining a building. You know what I mean? Right. And like, so I mean, waves of emotions, right, on a daily basis. Of, you know, anger, frustration, you know.
So you still have this job. I assume film is still in the back of the head, and you're not talking about jumping out of airplanes.
Right, that's gone.
That's gone now.
That's gone. I was like, completely like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not moving away. Like at this point now, I'm like, I'm kind of settling into. I think I'm just going to stay here.
Do you think you would have felt like your dad, however many years later, had you stayed at this job?
And I stay at the maintenance job?
Yeah.
I think so.
So you're in the maintenance job about 27, 28 at this point?
Yep.
Then what happens?
You know, once, like, when Paul did pass away, I took on the position fully, kind of a thing. And I didn't know how to, like, it was kind of like, I didn't probably have to stay, you know what I mean? But I did still feel a slight obligation to the place, because it was pretty generous of them to give them that position, to allow them that. And like, there aren't a lot of companies that would do that.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things I didn't care for about the company in general, right? Sure. But that I was like, like that. Yeah. Cancels a lot of shit out.
Before you keep going, I get a sense of, we don't know each other that well. It's kind of the whole point of this. But I get a sense of extreme integrity that comes from you. You see, it feels like if you are obligated to something, or you have a sense of respect for someone or something, you will follow through on that. Is that how you were raised? Like, did your dad raise you that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was it was, I think both my parents and even my siblings to a certain degree, like, they were, I think it was just the mentality, like, you don't, if something's hard, you don't quit. You stick with it. You know what I mean?
Unless it's college.
Right, yeah. Right.
Sure, yeah.
But it was kind of like, like I remember having one of my earliest jobs and being like, man, coming home and like tired and frustrated and like pissed off because I wasn't getting along with somebody or whatever. I'm like, I just want to quit. And then being like, no, you can't just quit because life doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? Like you can't just walk away. You got to deal with situations, and that's life. And I think from an early age, like I struggled. I'm dyslexic, and I struggled with school. I really struggled in school, and so I had to work quite a bit harder to keep up with the work in order to stay and not be left behind. Kind of,
I know that feeling far more than I wish I did.
You're dyslexic too?
I don't know if I don't think I'm dyslexic, but I have some stuff.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people in the entertainment industry who are. It's like a fascinating.
We're all off.
Yeah.
I think I have. I'm not diagnosed with. So a little bit about me.
Yeah.
I struggled in school a lot, and my family was big on. And this is where the racial element comes in. I know when I was at your guys' booth, I don't know if you heard me, but I said, like, I'm coming here to support you guys and everyone black.
Right. So, which we all felt pretty honored. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
hey.
no, you.
Yeah.
Man, if you saw me when I came there with my friend, Rachel, as soon as we walked in, I was like, I'll find you. I got to go to the booth. And I just started running around to find you guys. And that's Angela from Boy Meets World. She signed that for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I grew up, and my family was pretty early on integrated back in like the 50s, 60s, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And so they had fucking crosses burned on their lawns, like a screamed at. It was a bunch of nonsense. And they were raised like usually when you're the only black person in a situation, you're either raised to assimilate or get kicked out or die, one of the three. And so their approach was assimilation, and they raised me in a very white environment where I was raised to assimilate. But and I feel similar to the way you felt of like you just don't it's not gonna work for me. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't good at school in the way it was taught. Like don't put me down in front of multiple choice questions and tell me to get it. Don't put me in front of y equals mx plus b. You're not going to get anything from me, no matter how much I'm going to study. And it felt like all of the skills I had were meant nothing in our school system.
Yeah.
I could talk to people, I could ask questions, I could make a presentation, but that kind of doesn't matter. And so I struggled with school a lot. And then on the social level, I was usually the only black kid, and that was a mess on so many levels. And then when I was around other black kids, they could pick up, it's too black for the white kids, too white for the black kids.
Yeah.
I know we talked about Malcolm a little bit, and I know he wasn't there, and I don't know his life story. I would have to talk to him maybe one day. But it's really hard to describe, like, where you're trying to do the right thing and there's this smoke screen around you and you don't know what is right, what's up, down, left, right. You don't know who you are.
Right.
And I've lost track of what the fuck I'm even talking about. What are we talking about?
Well, we were talking about school, difficulty in school.
Yeah, just difficulty in school. It just wasn't for me. Yeah. And I pushed through because I was raised in a similar way, but I pushed through, and it left me with this horrid empty feeling. Like when you describe your dad being like, why the fuck am I in banking?
Yeah.
I get there's this itch on your back and you can't fucking scratch it no matter what. So I continue to I mean, your story is fascinating, and I'm still looking forward to seeing where it goes. But I continue to have respect for the way you seem to approach life so far. Obviously, there have been ups and downs. You're not going to win them all, but it seems like you seem to have a very good heart about you. And again, don't know you. Maybe you're a murderer.
Yeah.
Maybe when this camera goes off, it's a wrap.
The real son of a bitch.
You're very good.
Yeah.
I would respect it. But I don't know. It's hard to find people in this industry that are nice. And like, you know what I mean? Like,
I do know what you mean. And honestly, like when we started doing like Channel Awesome and meeting Malcolm and first like Rachel and then Tamara.
Sure.
It was kind of like I've worked enough in other films and stuff like that to where most people in the industry, like actors, whatever, you just you know what I mean? You're like, yeah.
What? Okay.
They're always acting, right?
Oh, I have so much. I have so much to say. Like and okay, on one level I get it because it's on some level it's a popularity. Like if people don't like you, then you're not gonna get booked. No one's gonna work with you.
Yeah.
But if you're not you, then you don't even know if they like you. You know
Right. No, exactly. And I think a lot of actors have to struggle with that, right?
Yeah.
With their identity as a person.
Uh-huh.
And I used to, when I was younger, I had this theory that I'm like, I think actors are the most boring people in the world, and they have to play other people in order to be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. A little bit about me.
Yeah, go over, because I am curious about your perspective as like
Yeah.
a comedian.
Yeah.
Around other comedians. Is it like, is it like the need or the like to always be on? Do I like to always be proving yourself as a comedian?
What a way to fuck up the flow, Aaron. There's from my experience, there's tribes. So you have like I describe them as the punk rock comics, the guys who are kind of living in the 80s, doing coke and fucking drinking, getting into fights, doing crazy shit, talking shit. There's those guys. You got the Disney-ish. You got the comics who are prim and proper, and this is probably leaning more into that acting stuff you were talking about, who they turn it on and are they charismatic? And I'm impressed by it because I don't know how to do that. And then I would describe myself in my own little bubble with my own people. Like I think I'm better than everyone. No, I think I think in stand-up, because generally to be successful there you need a sense of authenticity. It's easy to suss out who is kind of fucking around, who's manipulative, and so I do my best to be around people that are as sincere as possible. To bring it all, okay, so I wanted to be an actor for years. That's what I thought I wanted, and get ready for more racial stuff. So I was in theater through high school, and I was the only black kid, minus maybe my senior year. Okay. And I remember we had this theater competition. It was about you had to do a scene or whatever and perform in front of real actors. Mm-hmm. I remember he plays live action Shaggy. God damn it, not Matthew McConaughey. That's not Matthew McConaughey.
No, but the dude
Matthew Lillard.
Yeah, he was in like the Scream movie.
Yes. Yeah. So he never met him, but he was there. So that was the tier, and this was around 2009. That was the tier of actors we were in front of. So we were in front of working actors, and I do this scene from Top Dog Underdog. I don't know if you know the play, but it's a 2-man play. They're two brothers and they're black, and I was so excited. It was the first time I could do a scene that no one else in class could do. I was super excited. Me and my friend Matt were doing the scene. We worked it out, and it's an aggressive scene. The play is rated R. Mm-hmm. It's really fucking crazy. And so we go do this scene where ultimately he kills me. And we're cursing, we're doing all this stuff. We do the scene, and then we get our notes back. You've acted before, and this is not rhetorical. Honestly, when you get acting notes, or you're supposed to give someone acting notes, what would you generally give them? Like if it's, yeah. I don't want to lead you. I sincerely want to know, if you're going to give someone acting notes, what would you give them generally?
I don't know. To be honest, like I've never given. I don't think I've ever given acting notes.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like I guess I would say, like working with actors as a director.
Yeah.
My thing is always like to be as genuine as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not to be, obviously you don't want to
Literally be you.
Literally, but you also want to draw in some self-experience, right, to the character, so that there seems to be a believability or authenticity to it, whoever the character is. Like you're not gonna just be yourself and saying the lines. You have to be that character. But I think in order to bring the audience believing you're that character, there has to be a little bit of yourself that you're putting into, some authenticity, some personal experience that you have to interject into it.
I think about like Robert De Niro, the way you just like he's Robert De Niro, but he's not Robert. You know what I mean? It's him, but it's not him.
Right.
That's a great acting note. The notes we got were we weren't acting black enough. No, for real. We weren't acting black enough. We were acting too white. We were being too Disney. We weren't being ghetto enough, so on and so forth.
Wait, you were being
not black
too
enough.
White?
We were acting too white, and we were not acting black enough.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure you can imagine.
Malcolm's got some stories. Malcolm's got some stories. Dude.
I would love to talk
this
about
is this is like, yeah.
And so I was furious. And this is pre-social media. This is, well, maybe Facebook exists, but it's not in the same way.
This is MySpace.
yeah. We have MySpace and like the college version of Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was like I was angry. I was furious, and we had no recourse. It's like this. It made me realize, like, oh, this is what it is.
Was it just like they left you these? It was like
they give you the notes, and you don't get to talk to them. They give you the notes. Yeah. I would have screamed at them.
Yeah.
They would have had to kick me out of the college because I was furious. And
which college is this?
It was at Cal State Fullerton.
Okay.
And I was in high school. It was a whole thing. So that's what made me want to do stand up so aggressively, because I was like, if nothing else, no one can tell me what I am while I'm on stage. I get to say exactly how I feel and why I feel it. And I yearn for acting. That's why when you came up to me at C2E2, I held it together. I held it, but as soon as I left, I went over to my friend. I was like, you don't even know. You said maybe. I was losing my shit because I was like, man, I like act. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I like working with people. But I just have gotten to this point where I refuse to fucking be shucking and jiving. Like, I'm not going to fucking do that anymore. Yeah. And I don't get that. And when I see your guys' videos, like with Malcolm, I don't get that sense. There's a sense of respect that you guys present to yourselves and your actors. And it's something that I just admire. Okay. Let's go all the way back to you, man. So when does Channel Awesome come into play?
So when while I'm still working at the club, and I'm, in my head kind of like film is so far removed from my mindset for a few years, because I was like, I can't even concentrate on it. Like, to think about it hurts because I don't have the time to devote to it. I don't have a minute to devote to it, because at that time, especially when I was kind of running the department and everything, I was working like 60 plus hours a week. Jesus. Some days sleeping on the floor in my friggin' office because I was like working double shifts and whatever. And, but I knew I had to change. I knew I had to get out of it. And I tell this story. But it's I literally had a dream one night.
Oh shit! Okay.
And we're gonna go there,
dude. This biography film is gonna be so cool. Okay, so you have a dream. So
I was used to just working crazy hours, and I was on call 24/7, and they utilized that to, it was like they abused it for sure. And I wouldn't even have had a cell phone probably if they didn't give me one and say, this is your phone, and now you have to answer it whenever,
What year would this have been?
This is probably like around 2005, 2006.
That could have been a BlackBerry you had.
Yeah.
God damn. Okay.
It was a flip phone, dude. I was like, I
shit.
literally was a flip phone.
Yeah.
And I think so mentally and physically drained and exhausted.
Yeah.
I had this dream that suddenly I was working in the city for some reason, and I wasn't even living in the city at this time. I was living out in the south suburbs because that's where the club was. And I had this dream. I was working in the city, and I was on my way to work, and I was like on the subway, going to work with all these other people, and it's just like you're like the cattle that are just kind of moving along, and all of a sudden the train stops, and everybody's forced to get out, and we're walking down the tunnel. And everybody's kind of clamoring, like, "Oh shit, what's going on?" Like, they're getting like texts or whatever, and they're getting messages and stuff, and this like air of like something serious is happening, like, and we're making our way, out of the subway to the streets, and we're in the city, like we're like walking down like probably like Michigan Avenue. I mean, it was just like a huge street. Everybody's filtering out of these buildings. Everybody's walking down the street, and there's like this nervousness and like this nervous laughter and everything, but like this air of like almost like a life-changing thing is happening, like a world-changing thing, like the apocalypse is about to happen or something. You know what I mean? Like that's the air in the air, and I'm like, oh, all right, now I know what I got to do. Like tomorrow doesn't matter anymore. My job doesn't fucking matter. Nothing matters. I just have to survive. And in my mind, in the dream, I'm like, all right, this is what I got to do to survive. I got to focus. What are the things I need? What are the supplies do I have? And I was like, this self-reliance kicked in. And I kind of felt like, oh, I'm onto it. Nobody else fucking knows what's really happening. You know what I mean? Everybody else is in their own little world, and they think that they're going to go back to work tomorrow. But no, everything's changing. This is going to be a life. And I don't even know what it was. It was like a fucking, like the zombie apocalypse, or just like, I don't know, like the, Y2K happened a little late and then all the power shut down. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it was like something was happening that was going to change the course of the earth. You know what I mean? But I had like this wave of calm come over me. Like it was like, oh yeah, all right, now I know what I'm going to do. Like I'm focused, and I just have to think about me and surviving another day. And there was some kind of it was a weird, like comfort in that. Mm-hmm. And my fucking phone rings and wakes me up. And I look over and I realize it's a dream, and I was like, fuck. And then it dawned on me. I was like, holy shit. I was willing to deal with the end of the world rather than to go to work another day. Like there's nothing more telling than that, right? There's no gift that you can be given like that is. There's no clearer message than that. And I literally started laughing to myself because it was like, yeah, I literally was willing. Like I was pissed off when I woke up out of a dream having to deal with the apocalypse. That was like a more like. That was something I felt like I could deal with. Yeah. But going to work and dealing with the bullshit every day of, fixing people's, problems. So I was like, oh, yeah. Then that was like the transition of like, I got to get out of here. I got to do something else. And
you have a lot of big moments.
Yeah.
You have a lot of very.
I think it's the way I tell the story, maybe. I think people are like, yeah, you're a good storyteller. You're a good story. Like, so.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah. Okay, so you have this dream.
We running late. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like, you gotta.
You're good. I don't
going,
have to. I don't have to be that. No. Okay. I'm riveted, man. I'm excited. I'm so excited. So you have your ayahuasca dream minus the ayahuasca. Yeah. You wake up and something clicks that like I need to do something.
Yeah, I gotta do something else. Like this isn't working out, right? Like mentally and. But it's like, and it always goes back to like I got to do something creative. You know what I mean? Like my mind, that's how my mind always worked. Was like I want to tell stories. I want to do it in a visual way. Like when I was young, I drew pictures. I would make things. I would create things. writing my own stories and whatever. And when I got that, that fix of like, oh yeah, no, making films and like having other people share it and the experience and everything, like that's what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I got to get back into that. That's somehow I got to, and I had been there long enough to where I had changed a few bosses, and like the last boss, I had worked, because like there was a guy, whoever like the building director was, mm-hmm. who was like in charge of the entire building. I was just in charge of maintenance and and stuff like that, and like I was in charge of one of the departments, and I was one of the managers or whatever. But the director of the building or whatever was like oversaw everything and reported to corporate. It was like run by this corporation. And this guy was kind of like, when he first came in, I was kind of like, this guy's kind of an ass, And I thought it was like, he came in like a hard ball, kind of like, But I think once he saw my work ethic and the work I was putting in, he like instantly then had respect for me. And he kind of knew too. He's like, this isn't what you want to do. He's like, what do you want to do? And I was telling him like, I don't know, but this isn't it. You're right. Like, I got to do something else. And so, but I'm like, but I don't want to leave you hanging, because you've been good. You've been cool. And so I'll help you find my replacement. I'll stick around for a few months, but the goal is I gotta move on. I gotta go back into film or go back to school or something that's gonna get me back on track. Because I was getting, so now I'm getting to like, I was like 30. Yeah. And I was like, now it's like, I'm not young enough to be, I can take all these chances and stuff.
No
like this might be my last.
Killing fires.
Yeah, exactly.
I get you.
And at this point, too, like my now wife and I were dating and stuff like that, and I was still living out there, but we moved into the city together. She was living in the city, and so we moved out to North Center, which is not that far from you. It's just
nice.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
I'm learning about Chicago.
Yeah.
Let me get this quick.
And so I was thinking about going back into school. I was looking at some schools, and there was some film schools and stuff like that in Chicago, other than Columbia. And
can I ask, what was the instinct of school? Why did you feel like that needed to be done?
I just felt like I needed like more resources and more like-minded people. Yeah, connections. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I had friends who were always like willing to like do shit with me, but they weren't necessarily like, they didn't know what they were doing, and they weren't like into it. They were just like, yeah, no, I'll show up and hold the camera. You know what I mean?
Also, you have water there in case you ever need it.
Oh, this is for me.
Yeah, that's for you.
So much.
And we've been speaking a lot. I figure you might be parched. Okay. So it was more about less about the skill of filming, more about the resources.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. I think it was to hold me accountable, to be like get in track, get back on track.
Yeah.
But by that same token, I was like, I had the cameras and I had equipment, and while I was kind of waiting, because school is expensive, and I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know, I don't want to waste the money. But I got to build some experience again and stuff like that. And I started just kind of making my own little short films and stuff like that and experimenting. And while I was doing that, I bumped into an old buddy who was like, yeah, you know what? I've been working with these guys, and they're building this kind of like online like TV network.
We sound so old, man.
Yeah, but it was because like in my mind I was like, the internet is the way to go. That's going to be the future. You know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, I didn't know how to navigate it in any way. And like YouTube was a thing by this point, but it was production value was not at all in the.
That was like back in the Numa days, right?
Yeah.
And Chocolate Rain. And that was when you went viral. They didn't have shows.
Right.
Sure.
And so, what they were talking about, they was like literally creating like a network, kind of like and not necessarily on YouTube, like creating their own website and everything, and just making content, like original programming for an online community. And I was like, yeah, that seems to be the way, like that's a great outlet, and the way things are going seems way more lucrative than trying to go to film festivals and that kind of shit. And, you know, I because I had cameras and equipment, he's like, yeah, like, I think you'd be a good asset. You know, we'll meet up with these guys. And that was the seed of Channel Awesome, was like that. Like, I was like in the beginning, really, like when they were forming it, kind of. And
who's the buddy? Who was the? I don't know if you're not saying names on purpose or not. If you're not, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, well,
we don't need to say anybody's name.
Yeah. But because he doesn't work with the company, he was there to help start it up, but then there was a bit of a falling out.
Fair enough.
But you know, that's when I met like Doug and his Rob and Mike, the owner, and stuff like that. And you know, it was exciting because it was like, oh yeah, these guys are super motivated. They were younger than me. They were like, you know, I'm like, they know what they're doing. They got their finger more on the pulse. Yeah. But I have a little bit more experience as far as like production wise and stuff like that. And I had the equipment and stuff. So it was kind of like, this is a good kind of partnership. And when it started, like they had like all these ideas for shows that they were going to do, like more well-produced kind of shows. And the Nostalgia Critic was like a test to see if they could make a sustainable kind of like thing. And it took off. It was like, I don't think they expected it to do as well, because they were originally looking at like getting angel investors and stuff like that to, you know, to pool our resources and stuff. And it was like, oh, well, maybe we don't need anybody. We could just have this and it sustains itself and we build off of this. But because it was like the low quality production value, they didn't need me necessarily anymore.
I've seen old school nostalgia. This shit is rough.
Yep.
Yeah.
But that was the beauty of the early days. You know what I mean? It was kind of like you could do it and, you know, and take chances. It was the Wild West of the internet kind of. And so my value dipped in the sense of like, yeah, well, what can Jim do? You know what I mean? It was like they kept me in the wings though. Like, sure. And you know, eventually Doug was like, yeah, do you know how to do Photoshop stuff? I was like, oh yeah, sure, I can do Photoshop stuff. I had never done any Photoshop stuff, but I was like, yeah, no, I can do that. Yeah, absolutely. So he was like, oh, give me some images. Like he would give me jokes, and then I'd create images for those. And I just taught myself how to do it and did it. And, you know, eventually it became easier. But like those first few, I spent like just days working on a single image, and it was like ridiculous. And I didn't tell him until years later that I was like, I didn't know. I was like, no. But, you know, I just had to keep myself relevant to the company because I knew eventually they're going to get to that place.
I'm going to speak on you for a second, and that is you seem to follow your gut. And that's the energy I get for you. Like if you feel like, I mean, you have an ayahuasca dreams and you have these moments in your life, that first cartoon that did well in high school, other points, it seems like if you have a gut feeling about something, you follow it. Is that fair to?
I think that's pretty fair, especially when I was younger. You know, as I've gotten older, it's harder to take those chances, right? Sure. But you know, I think one of the things that you have to have in order to make it or to sustain yourself is a little bit of that naivety. You know what I mean? That little bit of like of having to follow your gut once in a while and be like, nah, I need to take this as a risk or it's a chance. And even like, you know, like I was still working my maintenance job while I was doing this stuff with Channel Awesome in the beginning.
Sure.
And hoping that it was going to work out. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I can't do this much longer. You know what I mean? Like it's killing me. It's like soul crushing in a way. And, but having at least that outlet of like, oh, I could do some video production. I think things are going to pick up. And they started doing like their anniversary specials and stuff. And then I was like able to contribute more, like building things and making props. Specials? So like in the Nostalgia Critic, in like the first few years of like starting Channel Awesome, it was like just kind of the Nostalgia Critic was the label. And he worked with all these other producers, and they would once a year have like a big anniversary special where like all these other producers would come in and they'd make like a movie. That's exciting. In like a weekend. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I would help out on those with either camera or sometimes I would act or both. And for one of the last ones, they hired me to build all of the sets and props and stuff like that.
That's right, because you're a masculine man.
Yes,
You
exactly.
did.
Because like, you know how to make stuff. I was like, yes, I can make things.
So okay, so what it sounds like was you got connected to Channel Awesome in its infancy.
Yeah.
You made yourself relevant and useful to the system as a whole, and just kept working until it
Fit.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, oh, like you can do that, like cool.
Yeah.
And then like I built all these sets and these props and stuff, and I was like second camera on that shoot. And I had like 2 weeks of vacation time, and I just took my 2 weeks of vacation time just to work on the production. You know what I mean? And it was before kids and all that stuff. So it was like, it was easy it was like, all right, this is my chance. Like, I got to do it, And it was enough to impress them to where by the end of the production, my boss Mike came to me and he's like, we're thinking about opening a studio, our own studio, and would you be like the art director? Would you be willing to be the art director? I was like, oh my God, yeah, that'd be amazing. Like, I would love that.
So Mike, I've heard Mike once or twice. He's
the president of Channel, like the owner of the company. When he started it up, he basically was like, found Doug, and he's like, I can make you famous, kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
come here, kid.
He's like, I think I got an idea. He's like, I think I know how to work
Right.
this whole internet thing to your advantage.
Okay.
And so he's like the brains behind the behind the operation, kind of.
It's so funny how whoever the face is you're, and I don't fucking know all the behind the scenes of it, so I'm just like, yeah, Doug must be doing shit.
And there are probably a lot of YouTubers that do, right?
Yeah.
That's just but Doug leaving it meant to himself. He's like, yeah, and he's like, I don't have the that's not where my brain works. He's like, I have the creative brain and stuff like that, but he's like, I wouldn't have known how to make it all work the way Mike made it work.
So you gambled, and you worked hard, and you gambled, and here we are.
Here we are. So, yeah, as soon as they gave me that opportunity, I took it. We opened up the studio. I started making stuff, props, and it was like and still kind of like proven. And at that point too, like even though I had acted for them a few times, they were like, they'd have me step in and do something like, oh, you're a pretty good actor. You're like, oh yeah, like I'm like, yeah, no, I love acting. You know what I mean? Like, but it wasn't like I didn't want to sell myself as like, really, I want to be an actor. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. It was like, no, I'll just do whatever until I can have that opportunity.
How does it feel now? For some context, I'm 32 now, still doing my day job, still grinding at stand-up, still doing what I do. And I have hit this, I'm sure you feel this have felt this, where you hit this point of no return. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I moved away from everyone I know, and I've built this life here, and I've been doing stand-up for like 8 years now. This is what I do, whether this is going to work or not. And my hope is that it will work, but I don't know. But as someone who has gotten to the place of like, it worked.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I think, I mean, like, not a day goes by where I don't like pinch myself and be like, yeah, it worked out. Like, but there were like moments in my life where I was so far from it that I couldn't even see it anymore. You know what I mean? But I think there is always this, like, there's just like an amber of it still had to be there, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to take the chance when the opportunities came. Mm-hmm. And I think it was like Gene Siskel, I think, once said, it was like that every like famous person knows that they're going to be famous from an early age. Like they just have this, it's where they, I don't know, it's built in, it's just in there. And not that I'm like, oh, I'm so famous or whatever like that, but like, or successful or whatever. I don't remember the exact quote he said or whatever, but I think there's like a little bit of that there has to be, right? Because if there are lots of people who imagine themselves making it or doing whatever they want to do, but life things happen and whatever, and they get derailed, and then it's it's so much easier to take the easy choice or to take the safer choice, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe it as easy for sure. Safe is the
right.
Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I think I have one more question.
Okay,
and that is, we'll do it to the camera to make it dramatic. If you could talk to a kid who has a similar dream or goal, and you were to give advice, what would you say to them?
So I was asked a similar question once, or it was like, what would I have said to my younger self if I went back to like give some advice, kind of a thing? And I would, at that time, I was like, don't live in a world of regret, because it's so hard. And when you're starting off, you're going to make mistakes, and those mistakes, you can let those mistakes kind of define you and be like, oh no, I messed up. Maybe this isn't the route for me or whatever. But if you allow yourself to kind of make those mistakes and be like, all right, I'm not going to regret it. It was a learning experience. Every mistake you make is just, don't make that mistake again. You just move on and you chalk it off as a learning experience. And then that helps build your resilience and your character and whatever going forward in life. And if you truly want to do what you want to do, you can't really, can't fully lose sight of it, because, once you do, then you're like, once you start taking the safer route, it's so hard to get back to the thing that you really truly want to do or love.
It's beautiful.
Thanks.
You did it.
Yeah, awesome.